ready to move on to message authentication codes, or MACs. MACs are symmetric key cryptographic primitives used for achieving data origin authentication and data integrity, but not confidentiality.
Chapter 4 on message authentication codes is comprised of 2 video lectures. In V4a, we'll present the security notion for MAC schemes. Then, we'll give a high-level overview of how symmetric key encryption and MAC schemes are used in the GSM standard to secure communications between cell phones and base stations. We'll see 2 examples of MAC schemes in V4b, CBC MAC, which is constructed from a block cipher, and HMAC, which is constructed from iterated hash functions.
I'll begin with the definition. A message authentication code, or MAC scheme, is a family of functions parameterized by an L-bit key k, where each function in the family can be efficiently computed. So there are 2 to the L functions in this family, 1 function for each L-bit key k. Each function maps binary strings of length up to some fixed upper bound to binary strings of a fixed length n. For any message x in key k, t, which is the MAC of x with respect to k, is called the MAC or the tag of x. As we'll see, MAC schemes are used to provide data integrity and data origin authentication. They are symmetric key schemes because Alice and Bob will share the same secret key in order to achieve data integrity and data origin authentication. Here's how Alice and Bob can use a MAC scheme to achieve data integrity and data origin authentication. Alice and Bob begin by sharing a secret key from the key space. They do this somehow by communicating over a secured channel. When Alice wants to send Bob a message, she computes the tag T of the message X using her secret key K, and she sends a message and the tag to Bob over the unsecured channel. When Bob receives the message and the tag, he recomputes the tag using his copy of the secret key and compares it to the tag he received from Alice. If the tags are the same, then he accepts the message as having originated from Alice. Otherwise, he rejects the message. The idea is that if an adversary sees the message and the tag and modifies the message X, even in a single bit, then she cannot compute the correct tag of the modified message because she doesn't know K. Similarly, if the adversary selects her own message X, she cannot compute its tag since she doesn't know K. So in this way, a MAC scheme can provide data integrity and data origin authentication. Note that MAC schemes do not provide confidentiality, since the message X is sent in the clear. If confidentiality is required, then one has to properly combine an encryption scheme with a MAC scheme. We'll do this in Chapter 5. Note also that a MAC scheme does not provide non-repudiation. This is because when Bob receives a tagged message from Alice and the tag is valid, then Bob is convinced that the message came from Alice. However, Bob cannot convince a third party that the message came from Alice, because Bob could have generated the message and tag himself. This is the consequence of Alice and Bob sharing the same secret key. Lastly, I'll note that an adversary who captures the message and tag can replay this tagged message to Bob at a future point in time, and Bob will accept the tagged message. To avoid such replay attacks, Alice should add a timestamp of some sort or a sequence number to the message before sending it to Bob. I'll next define what it means for a MAC scheme to be secure. Our goal is to formulate a strong security definition, so I'll give the adversary maximal capabilities and make her goal as weak as possible. If a MAC scheme is secure with respect to this definition, then we have the assurance that even very strong adversaries cannot meet very weak goals. And in this sense, the definition is a very strong one. Let K be the secret key shared by Alice and Bob. Of course, the adversary does not know K. Since Alice sends Bob tagged messages over the unsecure channel, we should assume that the adversary knows some messages and their valid tags. I'll give the attacker a stronger capability. So, I'll assume that the attacker is allowed to obtain, either from Alice or Bob, tags for messages of the adversary's choosing. So, we'll view the adversary as having access to a so-called MAC oracle. The adversary's goal is very weak. Namely, she has to obtain the tag of any new message. In other words, any message whose tag she did not already obtain from Alice or Bob. Note that there's no requirement that this message make any sense in an application. It can be any message whatsoever whose tag the adversary did not already obtain from Alice or Bob. Here then is our security definition. A MAC scheme is said to be secure if, given some tags for messages of the adversary's choosing, it is computationally infeasible to compute with non-negligible success probability a valid message tag pair for any new message. More concisely, a MAC scheme is secure if it is existentially unforgeable against chosen message attack. A secure MAC scheme can be used to provide data integrity and data origin authentication. This is because the adversary cannot compute the valid tag for any message of her choosing, nor for any modification of a message that Alice sent to Bob. The security definition captures very strong capabilities for the adversary, namely access to a MAC oracle, from which the adversary can obtain tags for any messages x1, x2, up to xn of her choosing. The definition also captures a very weak goal for the adversary, namely the ability to compute a message and its valid tag for any new message x which the adversary did not already give to the MAC oracle. An ideal MAC scheme is one where each of the MAC functions is a randomly selected function. Like ideal hash functions, ideal MAC schemes are useless in practice because one cannot compactly describe these randomly selected functions. Nonetheless, when analyzing a generic attack on a MAC scheme, it's reasonable to assume that the MAC scheme is ideal. I'll next describe two generic attacks on MAC schemes. The first generic attack on MAC schemes is tag guessing. The adversary selects an arbitrary message x and then selects a random tag y from the tag space and guesses that the MAC of x is y. Assuming that the MAC function is a randomly selected function, the probability of success is 1 over 2 to the n. And that's because the total number of possible tags for x is 2 to the n. Note that the adversary cannot check her guess directly because the adversary does not know the key k. And so, to make sure that MAC guessing is infeasible, the length of the tag should be at least 128 bits. In that case, the probability of success is only 1 over 2 to the 128, which is essentially 0. The second generic attack on MAC schemes is exhaustive key search. The adversary is given R known message tag pairs x1t1, x2t2, up to xrtr. She can make guesses for the key k, and check each guess by confirming that the tags verify. How large should R be in order to make sure that there is only one key for which all R tags verify? We can use the same analysis we used when we estimated the number of false keys in the meet in the middle attack on double DES. Assuming that the MAC functions are randomly generated, the expected number of keys for which the R tags verify, is 1, which is for the actual secret key, which was used to generate these R message tag pairs, plus the number of false keys. The number of false keys is the total number of keys, except the actual secret key, times the probability that any one of these keys produces tag T1 for X1 and tag TR for XR. And so, we need to choose R so that this number of false keys is essentially 0. For example, if L and N are both 128, and we select R2 equal 2, then the number of false keys is essentially 0. In this case, the expected number of steps in exhaustive key search is roughly equal to half the size of the key space 2 to the L. Thus, to ensure that exhaustive key search is infeasible, the length of the key should be at least 128 bits. In summary, to circumvent the generic attacks, both the tag length and the key length should be at least 128 bits.
Cell phones around the world interoperate with each other because of global standards for mobile communications. The first version of the standard, GSM, or Global System for Mobile, were used in 2G and 2.5G. This evolved to 3G UMTS and then 4G LTE, and we're now in the process of moving on to 5G. We'll sketch the basic security mechanisms in GSM, the core of which is the basis for 3G, 4G, and 5G. GSM security is notable because it uses only symmetric key primitives and no public key cryptography. 3G, 4G, and 5G security improves upon GSM security in several ways, but we won't discuss those improvements here.
The security objectives of GSM are entity authentication and confidentiality. Cell phone service providers need to be assured that entities accessing their service are legitimate subscribers. GSM provides entity authentication by using a MAC scheme. Users need the assurance that their cell phone communications are private, and this assurance is provided through the use of encryption. It's important to note that GSM does not provide end-to-end security. In other words, confidentiality of the conversation between two cell phone users. Also, authentication is only one way. The phone authenticates itself to the base station. As I mentioned earlier, GSM uses only symmetric key cryptography. The main cryptographic ingredients are a symmetric key encryption scheme, a symmetric key MAC scheme, and a key derivation function. GSM uses custom-designed cryptographic primitives, but the details are not relevant to this lecture. So think of AES as being used for encryption, HMAC for macking, and an HMAC KDF for key derivation.
Sorry for the interruption. I thought I would mention that 2G used the stream cipher A5-1, which in subsequent years was found to have numerous security weaknesses. 3G, 4G, and 5G use stream ciphers from the Snow family. You could take a look at the Wikipedia articles to learn more.
One might wonder, how do a cell phone user, such as Alice, and cell phone tower, let's say Bob, agree upon a shared secret key? The GSM solution is to use SIM cards. A SIM card manufacturer, such as Gemalto, randomly selects a secret key K and installs it in a SIM card. A copy of K is securely given to the cell phone service provider. When a user Alice signs up for cell phone service, the cell phone service provider securely delivers the SIM card to Alice. Alice then manually installs it in her phone. In this way, Alice and Bob have a shared secret key K, which is also known to Gemalto and no one else. Of course, a different key K is chosen for each cell phone user. Here's the basic GSM security protocol. Alice is a cell phone user and Bob is a cell phone service provider. Alice first sends an authentication request to Bob. Bob selects a challenge, which is a randomly selected bit string R of length 128, and sends R to Alice. Alice's SIM card, which contains her secret key K, computes the response T, which is the MAC tag of the challenge R using the key K, and sends T to Bob. Bob retrieves Alice's secret key K from its database and verifies that the tag is valid. If the tag is indeed valid, then Bob has the assurance that he is talking with Alice. Note that Bob selects a new random challenge for each communications session with Alice. Thus, an eavesdropper who captures a challenge R and Alice's response T is unable to use this response in the future in order to impersonate Alice. And this is because in that communication session, the challenge will most likely be different. And so the use of a random challenge avoids replay attacks. Alice and Bob then compute an encryption key KE by applying a key derivation function to the challenge R and using their secret key as a KDF key. Thereafter, they use the encryption scheme with KE as a secret key to encrypt and decrypt messages for each other for the remainder of the session.
I hope you appreciate that GSM security is conceptually quite simple. Alice authenticates herself to Bob by computing the correct MAC tags of random challenges issued by Bob. The confidentiality of her communications with Bob are protected by the use of symmetric key encryption. The main innovation of GSM is the manner in which cell phone service providers can distribute secret keys securely to millions of their subscribers. And this is done using SIM cards manufactured by companies such as Gemalto.
One drawback with using only symmetric key cryptography is that the SIM card manufacturer and the cell phone service providers have to securely maintain a large database of SIM keys. Imagine now that you are the National Security Agency and you would like the ability to eavesdrop on cell phone communications around the world. This is easy to do because the transmission is over the air. However, GSM encrypts this data. To decrypt it, you would need to know the secret key K. Now, one way to get K is to break into Alice's cell phone and retrieve K. But this might be difficult to do, might require a lot of work, and at the end, you only have one secret key. Or you might try to break into cell phone service providers' databases and then get the keys from many subscribers. This might also be hard to do because there are many cell phone service providers around the world, and each takes different measures to protect the security of its database. A much more attractive approach from NSA's point of view would be to break into Gemalto's databases and retrieve the secret keys that Gemalto selects from many cell phone service providers around the world. As it turns out, NSA was doing exactly that. In 2015, the Snowden documents reveal that the NSA and the British GCHQ had stolen SIM keys from Gemalto. Gemalto manufactures about 2 billion SIM cards each year. Gemalto claims that the NSA had access to at most 100,000 SIM keys. But no one knows for sure how many SIM keys NSA was able to steal from Gemalto.
In video V4b, we'll present two MAC schemes. The first one, CBC MAC, is constructed from a block cipher. The second one, HMAC, is constructed from an iterated hash function. Both these MAC schemes are widely deployed in practice. We'll also take a quick look at key derivation functions. I'll talk to you later.